Judy, I am a compulsive overeater. Good morning, OA family and early birds. Ha ha, you don't know what an early bird is. So anyway, I'm not up all night. I get up really early in the morning. And I didn't know if I'd be here today because I was in the emergency room last night with my husband, who's okay, but it was like this permeating thought, I gotta be up, I gotta be up. So just to give you a little bit about my background, let me start with this prayer. God, please help me not have the need to try to impress anyone here, and just to let this all be about the power of you and this program and what a miracle it's performed in my life. I was always a compulsive overeater. I don't remember a time that I wasn't. Um, I was put on my first diet at age 7. I went to a diet camp for 2 months. I don't know if they have them in the UK, fat camp, diet camp, where they send kids to lose weight. And I look back now and I think, that must have been pretty scary as a 7-year-old to be taken from my parents for 2 months and have strangers tell me what to eat and then weigh me once a week. And I went there for the next 9 summers. So pretty much between the ages of 7 and 16, I was always put on a diet. Diet at diet camp, then diet when I came home. And it was during this time, I would think probably in high school, that I started to believe the lie that I built my entire life upon, that I was not as good as others because of my weight. And I find it sad, but that was my truth. All the decisions I made in my life, everything was based on that lie, and how I desperately wanted you to like me, how I desperately wanted to lose weight so you would like me. And it was only until this recovery that I realized that I only wanted to lose weight so you'd like me. I could care nothing about health, never even a thought, especially with the crazy things that I did to try to lose weight. I'm going to show you some pictures. I will tell you, I came in before my 30th birthday the first time. I am 67 now. First recovery, probably about 5 years abstinence, huge weight loss, relapse, came back 5 years later where I doubled my weight. Second recovery, same thing, in a few years, relapsed a few years, and I leave OA, I don't stay. And then by a miracle of God, this December I have 12 and a half years, and I'm not going anywhere. So just to show you some pictures of me. This was in my first relapse. I don't really have before pictures, but this is probably the height of my weight. Um, this is when I came back in this time. Surprisingly, I did not get back to 300 pounds. 300 pounds is my happy place. And this was me in this past Christmas. Truly a miracle. I've been, dare I say, normal body size for a bunch of years now. And I always kid and think, oh, someone's going to raise their hand and say, no, you're not, Judy. You got to lose 10 more pounds. And, but I know that's not reality today. So in my first recovery, I had a huge spiritual awakening, very strong recovery. I mean, OA was everything to me. I spoke, I sponsored, but I had zero emotional sobriety, which I've only come to realize now. And I was still living lives of complete dishonesty, not with the food, but in other areas of my life that I was not even willing to look at. Um, I don't know, I almost consider them beyond defects, but other addictions. And and I believe, like, even though my dishonesty had nothing to do with food, all roads are going to lead back to food, because somewhere deep inside that guilt, remorse, and shame is just going to get to me. I One thing I can share, a real downfall for me in my first recovery, you never just, in my opinion, you never just pick up the food. It's always a slow slide, for me anyway. And just to share a huge warning sign for me, I started looking for reasons to eat out. And it had to be a restaurant that had an all you can eat, because I had a volume was my middle name. I didn't care what I was eating, just as long as it was a lot of it and I could shove it in my mouth as quickly as I could. So that was probably my biggest warning sign. Also, I'd never been a normal body size, and my head just swelled, kind of like in proportion to every pound I lost, my head got bigger. And I was just insane, even though I lost all my weight, had a huge spiritual awakening. I will just share with you, I came in as a non-believing Jew, and through my spiritual awakening, I converted and became a Christian. And if you were going to tell me the top million things I wanted to do in my life, it wouldn't even have made the top million, because believing in God was the last thing I ever wanted. Um, I thought God did nothing but scam people. I thought, all the ministers just wanted people's money. I thought people who believed in God were weak. Of course, I was weak, but I didn't know that. And so I started eating, and I was probably in a relapse for about I probably gained about 50 pounds before I even acknowledged I was in a relapse. So I left OA, floundered, tried to lose weight desperately. I tried to lose weight so hard that I more than doubled my weight. And that's what happens when I try to lose weight. I finally came back a second time. It was my husband who encouraged me. I did meet my husband in OA, and I don't know if I recommend marrying another compulsive overeater, because we relapse at different times. But we are married 30 years, which is a miracle. Um, so I came back, and I remember just crying my eyes out and terrified. Nobody would even recognize me, but everybody was loving, welcoming, and there I was again in OA, loving life, acting out in the same dishonesty I was before. I had a real addiction to people. That was my problem. And left OA once again. And then, I was retiring early, and I read this article, and it said, whatever you're going to do after you retire, you should start now. So about 6 months before I retired, I came back to OA and I joined a gym. And unlike my first two recoveries, I did not get abstinent that meeting. I remember I called an old sponsor, and she met me for coffee and came with me. And I got to tell you, I wore the tightest outfit possible, because I did not want people in those rooms to see how much weight I gained. But I'm just so grateful I came back. It took me a few months to get abstinent again. I I had binged the night before. And my belief is we get abstinent in our sleep, because we go to bed in our disease active, and we wake up and we're abstinent and we don't even know it. And I had plenty of day ones before, but somehow I managed to stick to my diet food plan that day. And I did it for about 3 days and went to my meeting, and somebody was available to sponsor. I didn't know them. I didn't know what kind of recovery they had, but it didn't matter. They had what I wanted. They were abstinent and they were available. So I'm not always in agreement where it says find somebody who has what you want, as far as, will I get along with them? It didn't matter. I needed a sponsor. And the great thing for me about getting a sponsor is I'm immediately filled with hope. Someone believed in me. I had somebody to report my food to do step work with. I just felt I was in the game. And she was my third sponsor in this recovery. I could say, oh, there was a thing. She wasn't the best sponsor for me. She, I don't know if she ever even read the big book, but I remembered the tapes. I'm not going to say the two people outside, whoever did. I used to have the cassette tapes of their big book studies, and I went online and I just started doing, reading the big book. I kept her as a sponsor because honestly, I was terrified of her. And I really believe those first 2 years I was abstinent because I was afraid not to be. She was, I'm not going to say anything negative about her, but one day she called me and said she was leaving OA. And I remember thinking, God did for me what I can't do for myself. I got another sponsor who was wonderful. She taught me how to love myself, older than I am. She's in her 80s, but I needed to, after a few years, find another sponsor because it was a very enmeshed relationship. She thought I was her daughter and I could do no wrong in her eyes. So every time I would tell her, oh, Judy, stop being so hard on yourself, that was not going to work. The sponsor I have today, she inspires me. I feel honored to have her as a sponsor. She's got many years. She's a 200-pounder. She's in her 80s and does so much service and works this program like the first day of her recovery. And she says things like, I have to want abstinence more than I want to breathe. And I have to have that mindset of this recovery. So this recovery has been amazing. And it was only a few years ago that I started to tackle my emotional sobriety because I didn't know I didn't have any. Except I noticed in my nightly reviews, my sponsor would send me back her response and say, "Oh, Judy, that's your low self-esteem." And I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" I had no idea. And I also will tell you, I let go of that dishonesty early on in this recovery, and that's been a blessing. So I am like totally honest with my sponsor about everything, especially my insane thinking. Um, but these last few years have been great. As far as the emotional sobriety, the hardest thing I think was probably trying to break that lie that my body size is not my identity, that people actually care about what's inside of me. I just couldn't fathom that. And I moved to an over 55. I don't know if they have them in England. Everybody over 55 can move to these. And I thought, all right, I'm a normal body size. Everybody's going to want to be my friend. Nobody wanted to be. Like, it was just an eye opener. So, my program today, God is everything to me, like it says in the big book. He is or he isn't. I learned in this recovery about spirituality. Um, when I first got my spiritual awakening, I was desperate for religion. I'd never had it, and I bounced around different churches and temples. And so, but I always have had this really personal relationship with God. And I think maybe because I discovered God not until I was 30 or 31, whenever it was, early on in my recovery. And I have the greatest comfort believing in my God and my understanding, or can I even understand God? I had a fathom of the love of God when I realized that I threw away both my recoveries and he gave me a better recovery than ever. I threw away both my weight losses and he brought me to a weight lower than high school. I literally broke my marriage in half, and my marriage is better than it's ever been. I With my finances, I played the stock market like a crash diet. Let me get rich quick, and I lost a lot of money. And we live in a house beyond my wildest dreams. I could have easily gotten fired. Oh my God, how I could have gotten fired, and I retired from my company. And so, like, it's hard for me even to comprehend this kind of love from a God. Um, and as hokey as this might sound, I like to say God loves me a trillion times a trillion times a trillion times more than I can even imagine. I do a lot of two-way prayer. I make sure I got up extra early because I love my morning prayer time. I think sometimes it's why I don't sleep, because I can't wait to get up and spend my time with God. And I had this vision that, you know, everything I ever did was piled high on a table, and God like just took his arm and swapped it all off, and he never even looked at it. So whole program's important to me. I work the steps every single year. I love studying step one. I think I could study step one every day of my life because it just keeps enlightening me to what a compulsive overeater I am. And the longer I'm in recovery, the more I see how controlled I was by the food, by my disease, by the lies, by the low self-esteem, by the insecurities. I do live a life today beyond my wildest dreams. I am a creative person, and only this past year, God has gifted me was such an amazing thing. I've always wanted to figure out how to make angels. They're all over my house, and I make these big, elaborate angels, and they fill me with such joy. And wow, 36 seconds left. The only I can tell you is this program really does work. And one of the most powerful things I ever heard shared, it was actually from an AA speaker. And he said, the good news is, I'll change it. You never have to eat again. And today can be your day one, a day at a time for the rest of your life. By God's grace, I will never relapse again. And I am really grateful that I could do this morning.